Last weekend, we went to Moab as a family and had a great time. On the drive home, our son in law said to us, "You know, one of the cool things about going to national parks is that you meet other people who go to national parks." We think that's really important, and we're going to talk about why. Here we go. Welcome to the What Could Go Right podcast. We are your hosts, Erik, Orton.
And I'm Emily Orton.
And here we talk about personal growth and sailing. In 2014, we moved aboard a fixer-upper sailboat and bootstrapped a year sailing with our 5 kids, and it changed our lives forever.
We tell the whole story in our memoir, our book, 7 at Sea. On this podcast, we want to help you go from fear to freedom, one adventure at a time. So we recently got back from Moab, as Erik was saying at top of the show, and it is south, but like a little...
It's east. It's southeast Utah.
Yeah, southeast. And just so anybody listening from wherever you are, you know where it's located. Very deserty. There are tons of national parks there. I think there was like Arches National Park. There's Canyonlands National Park. There was like Dead Horse State Park.
Yeah.
And we didn't go to it, but Indian
Creek, which is not a national park. It's the road into the south part of Canyonlands, but it's a world-class rock climbing spot, which is the main reason I've been down there before.
So this is just to give you a sense of the geography. One of the kind of testimonials about Moab was like being on Mars, but with more atmosphere. So like basically you can breathe there.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool. It's a very different kind of place. And there's not a lot happening there outside of coming to see the nature and the natural phenomenons. And so, yeah, this, what our son-in-law said, we thought he brought up a really, really good point. So go ahead if you want to reiterate.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I'll just say the main activities, you know, Moab is kind of the town that's at the center of these national parks, which is where we camped. And we ended up meeting up with some friends of ours who had planned a trip the same weekend, and they were staying at a hotel. And so there's a variety of ways to do it. You can stay, you know, you can stay in a hotel or a resort type place. You can get an Airbnb. You can go camping. You can also get permits to go backcountry if you want to do backpacking or even off-road camping. And there's tons and tons of motocross biking and kind of like side-by-sides, I think is what they call them. I don't know a lot of the motorsport type stuff, but there's lots of off-road activities in addition to hiking. There's canoeing, kayaking. And so we have sort of, without really being conscious of it, been very big visitors of national parks. Whenever we can, we go to these places. And I would say in the U.S. for sure, but also outside the U.S. In fact, a lot of the places that we sail are parks, national parks in the countries where we are, like in Mexico, like we were just talking about in Sardinia last week.
Yeah, and a few years ago, they had celebrated the 150th birthday or anniversary of Canada, and all the national parks were open for free that whole year, and we went to quite a few.
Yeah, and I'm even just thinking about, even in the Virgin Islands, we visit the national park areas. Certainly in other parts of the Caribbean, in Anguilla, we went to some of the, you know, you have to have permits to go there. They're just special places. They're really special places. And so what our son-in-law was saying is that he's like, you meet people who, and he went on to describe some of their attributes. He said, first of all, these are not easy places to get to oftentimes. So they are people who are deliberate. They are people who have made time in their schedule to come to this place. They've made the effort, and they're there to enjoy something that it has to offer, which is a certain kind of person. And we all, I'm guessing most people have heard the adage of you become like the 5 people you spend the most time with, which I happen to believe is true. And the kind of people that we spend time with has a lot to do with the kinds of places we choose to be. Mm-hmm. And so when you're in a national park, you meet people who go to national parks, obviously.
Right. And I love what you said, that it takes some planning. It takes some allocation of time, space, and resource. And sometimes it takes, a willingness to be a little bit uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even if you're staying in a resort, it's like, oh, we drove here, or we hopped on
Hey,
an airplane, or we gave up the convenience of our everyday place to come to this new place.
can you talk? You want to talk about that for a second? Because I know you were saying it was hard for you to pull away.
Yeah, I think, um, you know, the farther and farther we get away from our days of Fezziwig when we lived aboard a sailboat for a year as a family, and our, what was it, like 5 years of traveling like 80% of the time, it was very easy because we were in motion all the time. Now we have a home base in Salt Lake. I love our home. I love our community. I love the school where our daughter goes to school. There's so many things I love about it. I have plans and projects. I'm involved. I have obligations. And I think, oh my goodness, like I'm so impressed that we were able to pull away from that similar situation because we loved our situation so much in New York City before we lived on a sailboat. Then I was like, it is challenging. And I think I would relate it to when we were living on the sailboat. Sometimes we would go to an island and we would stay there for a long time, like a couple of weeks or maybe even longer. And we would be at anchor that whole time. And then when we decided it was time for us to move on, we'd pull anchor and we'd start sailing again. We would get a little bit seasick. We're like, it doesn't just go away. Like we stopped moving, so we stopped getting seasick, but now we're moving again.
Your body recalibrates.
And so when we get a little bit nauseous about it, and then we would adjust to the movement, and the movement would not make us sick anymore. And so I feel that way here. Erik gets up and goes greater distances with greater frequency than what I do. And so it was a little harder for me, even though I'm like, this will be a fun plan. It's only like a 4-hour drive. It's, we know how to do this. We have a 12-man tent. We have foam pads to sleep on. It's going to be comfortable. Like, even with all that, it's just a little bit extra effort to cross that threshold and get out of, your familiar, convenient life in your everyday location, whatever that is for you. So just to say, it was good for me. And I respect that about everybody else who is out there too. I know that it can take a little extra energy to get out of your house and go somewhere else, just like it takes a little extra energy for a rocket to leave the Earth's atmosphere, but then it doesn't take much energy at all. It's just
Once you're out of the gravity and once you're out of that tractor beam.
Yep, once you're out of the tractor beam. So that for me, it's like I always have to kind of overcome that tractor beam to get moving again. And it was so fun. And I love it once I get in that headspace. So I'm just kind of trying to prevent it from being so hard in the future by recognizing that pattern in myself and saying, oh yeah, it always feels a little harder at the start, but it's always so fun and so worth it. And I'm so much happier when we go. So, but those are the kind of people.
I'm really glad. I'm glad we're going on record about this. I'll revisit this podcast as needed when I'm pitching future trips.
Right. This used to be when we would tell our kids, here's a video of you telling me that you wanted to go outside and now it's time to go. So let's go.
Keep your word to yourself.
Keep your word to yourself.
Okay. So, okay.
But, let's dig into this idea about the people you hang out with and where you find them.
First of all, it was extra fun because when we mentioned that we might be going to Moab to some friends, they said, oh, we're going too.
Yeah.
Let's meet up there. And so we ended up, like I said, they were staying at a hotel. We were camping along the Colorado River, beautiful spot. And we would just meet up in the morning or the afternoon and we would go for a hike and then kind of maybe split off and go regroup for a moment with, in our own spaces and then come back together.
Yeah, go eat lunch, go rock climbing,
but we would
get
rock
some
climb.
donuts.
Yeah, we rock climbed together. We met up at a donut place. But even though we knew them before, we were meeting up and it's Mike and Aaron Allen. We had a great interview with them on a previous episode. I can't remember which one it was, but they are the kind of people that go to national parks. And so we were able to then meet up and spend multiple days just doing fun stuff together as two families, which was really special. And I think this is the kicker. We're on the trail coming back from Corona Arch, our first hike on the first day. And Mike and I are chatting. And all of a sudden I look up and I see my friend York.
Wyatt E. Young. We've done an interview with him and his wife.
Who have also been on our podcast twice. and they've gone sailing with us. They were on the first boat that we ever took sailing many years ago, and they're coming up the trail. We did not know they were there, and we just happened to, of all the trails in Moab,
in all the national parks,
to bump into him and his wife Jane heading the opposite direction, and we just stopped and got off the trail so people could get past, and had a fun 10-minute visit and just quick catch up. And then they kept going on their hike and we kept going on ours. But you run into when you go to national parks, you run into the kind of people that go to national parks. And these are just some of our favorite people. And, not everybody that we love goes to national parks. That's not what I'm saying. But I guess for me, going back to what our son-in-law was saying, is that the environments that you choose to be in determine the kind of people that you're going to run into. Mm-hmm. And I have some thoughts on that, but before I go for it, I want to pause and see if you have anything you want to chime in on about that, what I was just saying.
We have made incredible friends in national parks. And as people who like to travel, when we go to national parks, we meet other people who like to travel, who are happy to go on a road trip, who want to see the country, who appreciate the great outdoors, who are willing to cook over a fire or share their RV with you if you're freezing in your tent or whatever it might be. I'm just saying, yes, that's just an example of some of the reasons where these are the things I like. Other people here like those same things as me. In fact, everyone here is doing the exact same thing. I will say one time when we were new in New York City, we hopped on the subway. I think our oldest, Karina, was a toddler, and she said, all of these people are going to the same place as us.
Everyone on the train.
Yep.
Everyone on the A train is going downtown.
Yeah. So I don't know if the A train counts you'll meet people who ride the subway. But let's go on. Let's go a little deeper, because it's definitely not about national parks. That's just a metaphor.
Yeah. The national parks are a metaphor. So for example, this isn't obvious. When we lived on a sailboat, guess who we met? We met other people who lived on a sailboat. And it's a certain kind of person. And you have a kind of a quality of what's in common.
Yeah, what you care about.
Yeah. And I'll just rattle off a few other scenarios. When you go to church, you meet other people who go to church, and you have a certain amount of things in common, and there's sort of a quality of the kind of person that's there. Same thing is, when I was an employee and I went to work, I would meet other employees and we would talk about employee stuff. Mm-hmm. And
I would say when you went to the Grateful Dead concert as a teenager, you met other people that you did not have that much in common with. Well, we all liked the music.
I wasn't smoking weed, but we all liked the Grateful Dead.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's a great example. When you go to a rock concert, you're actually coming together. You're there because you're fans of whoever is playing on stage, whether it's the opening act or the headliner. And that's why there's such a powerful energy at a rock concert, because you're all there. Most of you are going to know the songs. Everyone's going to be able to sing along. There's such a powerful unity in that. Mm-hmm. And so I think rock concerts are really compelling for that reason. Classical music concerts, I'm all about it, but there's a different kind of energy.
Yeah.
You're not all singing along.
Yeah. You'll look sideways at each other if you
and you applaud, but not between the movements, only at the end of the movements. There's a whole protocol to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, when you go to a classical music concert, you're with a certain kind of person. And I think that we are in more bubbles more often than we realize. And the big leaps in life come when you drop in and visit a totally new bubble and realize that, there's a whole quality of person out there, and they think and talk about things first of all, they think and talk about different things. They think and talk about them and act on them in different ways. And so if you're looking to change your life, one of the most powerful ways to do it is to change your environment. Right now, Emily and I are in the process of looking at acquiring a business. And
we may have talked about this before.
It's a rambly road that we're on. But I'll say this. One of the fun things about this Sardinia trip that I was on last week, that we talked about last week, was on the boat were 4 entrepreneurs. 2 of them had recently sold businesses. One had actually bought a business from his father-in-law, and one had kind of turned it over to her kids.
Mm-hmm.
But as somebody who's on this journey, this, business acquisition or small business journey, I like being around people who are operating their own business, have owned it in the past and sold it, or are trying to acquire one or starting up a new one. Because by being around those kinds of people, I'm in a community that helps reinforce that identity that I want for myself. And I'm also learning from them.
I think that's really important what you're saying. Like the value is, hey, these are people that I want to become more like. I know you've used the word quality of person a few different times, and I don't think you intend to say that like one person is of greater inherent worth than another person. It's just these are people who are going the same direction that I want to go. And we like to call that the current. We don't talk about our coaching practice very much, but when we are coaching, we talk about the current and this idea of the people that you are giving space in your head, whether you're reading their content or watching their content or hanging out with them in person.
Or reading books about
Yeah,
them.
reading books about them, however much space they get in your mind that you are really hanging out with these people, and they start to normalize the things that you are aspiring to, and they make it feel like it's not so hard. And we are creatures of habit. We go along with the current that we're in. And so if we can intentionally get ourselves into a current that is going the direction we want to go, yes, it will still take effort, but it will take less effort when the whole community, this group of people that you're giving access to your mind most frequently, when they're all going in the same direction. And my favorite example of this is that I made friends with some women. We had kids in the same age group. We went to church together, things like that. So there were things in common, but the one that I spent the most time with started running.
Crazy talk.
Started running, and then there became like this whole little movement within the group around fitness. And just by hanging out around these people, they normalized this idea of running so much that I actually ended up completing a marathon. And obviously it took effort, and I woke up in the morning and I, did the things that you do when you're preparing for a marathon. But I 100% would never have done something like that just on my own. I was just like in a group and with a close friend that was doing that thing. And I was like, oh yeah, I'll do that. It's so fun that we can like hang out together for hours every weekend. And then I just did it. And I was like, I don't know if I would do this if I didn't have a buddy to talk to the whole time. Because I'm always in it for the social opportunity. But that is just an example. Like if they had taken up, Indian cuisine, I probably would have done that instead. I just wanted to be around them. And so I just did what they were doing. And that can be to your benefit or to your detriment.
Yeah. So I'll say this, your life is going to follow the current of the people you spend your time with. So if you want to become a drug dealer, start hanging out with people who do drugs and deal drugs. And pretty soon you'll probably be a drug dealer.
You'll learn the ins and outs. You'll see the money. You'll know the risks. Like, I don't know anything about this world.
They'll normalize it and they'll make it seem like,
not a big deal.
Yeah. So, but if you want to become a really fantastic snowboarder, start hanging out with snowboarders and hang out at competitions and watch them and become friends with the best. And pretty soon your snowboarding game is really going to level up, and maybe you'll be on the podium someday.
I remember seeing this in our son when he was little in New York City. One of our we homeschooled our kids, and one of the sort of rewards for him, or hey, if this and this happens, we'll go down to the Nintendo store. And the Nintendo store in New York City is 2 stories. And it has a whole upstairs where it has all the new games, sometimes even stuff that hasn't been released yet. And they just let you try everything out. And some of the screens are gigantic. And so I would take him down there, and there would be people, mostly men of all ages, playing the games. And he would jump in to try to play a new game. And I know it's a competition, but the ones who were more experienced would tell him little tricks like use your controller like this, or try that, or go over here, or do whatever. And they would start coaching him along. And like they found great joy in bringing little buddy along in the ways of the video games. And, that's just one example. Like, oh, you go to the places where people care about video games, you're going to start getting coached along. You'll get the secrets. You'll feel like, oh, this is my club. This is part of my group. And we were just talking to a young man who was like, yeah, I go to an indoor rock climbing gym. And when I go at this time of day, it's other people who care about bouldering, and it's people that are my age, and we all get to be friends and we hang out. There's a lot of hanging out in bouldering. But it's all kind of centered around this one activity where we all have taken the pains to show up and pay the membership fee and, get our hands chalky.
Yeah. So I think for me, the takeaway is if there's something that you want to do or become, if you can find a way to connect with those kinds of people, which usually involves getting into a new environment, a new bubble. And to your point, when I said the quality of people, it's not like a better or less than, it's just like the kind of people that are doing the kinds of things that you want to do. And if you can find a way to get yourself into that environment, finding it and then having the guts to step in and feel a little bit uncomfortable, maybe at the beginning because you're new, that's the hardest part. But once you're there and you're in the groove and you're in the flow, then you've actually done almost all the work, because then you just get to coast along with the current. And if the current is going somewhere that you want to go, you're effortlessly going to become, or it's going to feel effortless rather, but it's going to feel easy to become the kind of person you want to become, to do the kind of things that you want to do. And so if you want to be the kind of person that goes to national parks, go to a national park, and you'll meet people that go to national parks, and that might lead to you moving into a van, quitting your job, and traveling the country for the rest of your life.
Or it might lead to your kids filling out every Junior Ranger book available and having a massive collection of pins. Any number of things. But I hope that if you are someone who is interested in living intentionally, who's willing to disrupt yourself, maybe step out of your comfort zone and go on a little bit of adventure. I mean, you also care so much about your relationships and wanting to live a meaningful life. Hopefully we can be part of your current, because here we like to talk about personal growth, living a meaningful, intentional life, and sailing. That was one of the great seminal experiences for us, was when we went through all the effort required to get out and live on a sailboat. It just like broke our minds and broke open the world and changed the way that we lived, changed the way that we think, changed the people that we hang out with. And so we'd love to be part of that expansion for you.
We want to normalize the things that feel outlandish or far-fetched for you, and just help you. We want to normalize it, and we also want to validate it, because I think we need those kinds of people in our lives, and we'd love to be that for you. And we'd love to help you answer the question, what could go right? Hey guys, it's Erik. Before we sign off today, I just wanted to share with you two things. First of all, I want to share with you some thoughts, some takeaways from the folks that actually joined us on our Sardinia trip. So at the end of the next few podcasts, I'm going to be sharing some clips directly from them. Also, we've had some shifts in our January sailing trips to the Virgin Islands. 2 trips. Each one has had 1 cabin's worth of people have to shift to another time. So January 20th through the 25th, we now have 1 cabin available for 2 people if you want to join us on that trip. Also, if you want to join us January 27th through February 1st, 2 folks also had to switch, so now there's a cabin available on that trip. So the last 2 weeks of January, if you want to stay on the British Virgin Islands, it's a beautiful time of year. It's 85 degrees, sunny, windy, like good sailing wind. So anyway, if you're interested in that, email me at hello@theawesomefactory.nyc, or you can DM me on Instagram, or just go to our website /sailing, and you can click up a time to speak directly. Anyway, I'd love to welcome you aboard.
I don't think I was really worried about anything except getting over here on time and not missing flights and things like that, because I'm not as an experienced traveler as most of my companions. And it was wonderful to get to learn new things and continue my education on sailing. And takeaway, if you're doubting anything about doing this, just don't be afraid to step outside of your comfort zone and go for it. It's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thanks, Melissa. And if you were to say 2 words to describe, what would you say?
Exhilarating, and it was an experience like no other.
Awesome. Thank you.